Christine's Corner. Stay and watch the show. You'll feed your heart and soul. Meeting people in the know. Christine's Corner. Christine's Corner. Christine's Corner.
Hey, welcome to Christine's Corner. Welcome back. I have my special guest, as you know, from the American Clock and Watch Museum. I'm practicing that and I messed up. I'm so sorry. This is Patty, the director of the museum.
Thank you so much for having me back to your show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've had her a few times, but we couldn't connect to get you back on. I'm so happy we have you back.
Me too.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the Clock and Watch. Obviously, that's what you have. And
absolutely.
they're probably,
so
I don't know how many years old.
Bristol, Connecticut. And we were founded in 1952 and opened our doors in 1954. So we will be 70 years this coming year, which is incredible.
Wow.
We opened up and we were the first museum dedicated to horology, or the study of time, in the United States.
Oh.
So it's a great designation for us to have.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Our collection really focuses on American timekeeping and the artistry and the ingenuity that the American production had in this country. You
said last time that you were on the show that that Bristol, and I think you said Thomaston, it's all clocks. There's so many clocks and
absolutely
factories to make the parts for the clocks.
Yeah, Connecticut actually was a hub of clockmaking and watchmaking. Starts in Bristol. There was, over time, there's been about, no pun intended, there's been about 280 different concerns involved in clock and watchmaking. Everything from the individual artisan to people who are painting dials to people who are producing springs and things like that, up through the factories. So that's a lot of industry here in Bristol.
Yeah.
But in Connecticut, there's also Thomaston with Seth Thomas, which is a very well-known name in clock manufacturing even today.
Yes.
Waterbury had the Waterbury Clock and Watch Company, and Timex takes a licking and keeps on ticking.
Yes.
New Haven had clockmaking, Ansonia, really just lots and lots of industry.
Wow.
Absolutely. And it starts here in Connecticut and in New England, and then moves south and moves west as the country develops.
But it started over on this side.
It starts here.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I didn't think about all those little parts, the springs and the
absolutely. Because
hand
when they first start making clocks, they're artisan made, right? Handcrafted.
Yes.
So you had a master clockmaker with an apprentice, and they would teach them the art of clockmaking. It was very work intensive because you're making all of these individual pieces and parts. And so everything that had to go into making the hands, making the movements, making the dials, making the cases, all of these different components that go into timepiece production.
Oh, you need carpentry with the wood, right?
Absolutely. And that's really why a lot of the industry starts in this area, because they had so many of the natural resources that were needed to make clocks and then later watches. So if you think about this area, it's very heavily wooded. So you had a lot of the materials to make the cases or to make the wooden works movements when they were doing that. Later on, they made the movements out of brass, and there was brass manufacturing. Waterbury was a big industry with brass, with their button manufacturing. Bristol had Bristol brass. They had the labor because there was a lot of immigration. So when you had factories, you had a labor force. You had the rivers, so you could transport your materials down the rivers or use it for water power, depending on when you were talking about. So a lot of things kind of played into this area really becoming a vibrant clock and watch manufacturing industry.
A perfect way for everything, for everybody to
absolutely
start the clock museum. Who started this idea of making? Do you know?
Well, timepiece production and timekeeping, it goes back for centuries. You know, the early days you could have used sundials or sand glasses.
Right.
There's things like water clocks.
Water clocks?
Where you don't necessarily tell what time it is, but it marks the passage of time, much like a sand glass would. You can mark what an hour or 2 hours or minutes would be. And then it really goes to, in Europe, of course, Europe is so much older than America is. We're such a new country comparatively.
Right.
You know, they were making watches very early on. Tower clocks in the middle of towns, where you could have the whole town would look to this one timepiece to tell what time it was and things like that.
I think the one in Thomaston still has the says time.
It does.
And the building is still there.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to see in many ways that some of the buildings that were used for the industries have been kind of adaptively reused. So in Thomaston, there's different businesses that are inside what had been the factory buildings.
Right.
In Bristol and Forestville, there's what used to be the Sessions Clock Company. Before that was Ian Welch. There's other small businesses inside there. In New Haven, the building is still there for the New Haven Clock Company, and it's undergone, you know, many different incarnations from a clock factory. It was a nightclub, I think, at one time.
Wow.
It was, and I think right now they're looking to maybe make it into some apartments and things like that. So, you know, but you at least still get that flavor of what the factories looked like and what it meant to the area that they lived around.
Yeah.
So many people worked there.
It's good that they made the buildings that strong that would last this long, and they can do so many other things with it.
Absolutely. The museum actually, excuse me, a couple of years ago, just got a donation of a couple of stained glass windows that had been in the E. Ingram Company factory building, which was here in Bristol. The factory moved out of Bristol and was demolished in the late 1960s, but we still find pieces of it. And so we were given these 4 beautiful, beautiful stained glass windows.
Wow.
And then a lantern that hung in the vestibule of it. The stained glass pieces we just had conserved, and we're going to be hanging them in the museum, as well as the lantern we're going to hang in the museum as well.
I would love to see that.
They're just so gorgeous, and it's nice to be able to rescue and to still have some of those elements of the building, even though the building itself isn't still there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There must be. I mean, I would love to see the stained glass. I mean, everything was so much different then.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. We were given them a couple of years ago, and we got a couple of grants to have them restored, and they came back very recently from the stained glass artist. We wanted to make sure that the windows were solid before we hung them up again, right?
Yeah.
But the difference in cleaning the glass is just spectacular, and it's going to look wonderful when the light comes through the windows into the stained glass. It's going to be really beautiful.
I mean, glass breaks so easily, and it's just amazing that they're still around.
Absolutely. We have pictures of the factory where they're installed, and it's in 1914, so 100 plus years ago, and they're still in really wonderful condition.
Yeah,
so it's very exciting for us when we find things like that.
Yeah, exactly. I know you don't just do the watch and the clocks. You mentioned children's programs.
Absolutely. We do programs at the museum for all ages. Since we talked about how clocks were made and all the different parts, one of the fun programs that we do, usually as a traveling museum program into schools and things like that, is an assembly line program. So we break a classroom or a group of students up into 2 different competing components.
Yeah.
We have some master craftsmen who have to build the clock from scratch.
Wow.
And then we have a group of kids who are the assembly line. So one person does the dial, one person colors the tablet, one person puts the hands on, and it shows the kids why assembly line production was so much why you could make so many more pieces than a master craftsman and an apprentice could.
Oh, what a great idea.
It's great. It's a lot of fun. The first time we did it, we were just hoping that the kids did it the right way so that it worked out the way it's supposed to, because really the artisan and the apprentice, they're making every single piece. Whereas
in
an assembly line, you have just your job and then you pass it off to the next person. But it's a lot of fun because it really does teach them how this, why this worked so much better, what the why this made so much impact on the industries. And at the end of the day, the classroom gets to vote on which clock that they want to keep, and they get to keep one of the pieces, and we'll put a little battery-operated movement in it, and they get to keep it for their classroom.
Oh, sweet.
So it's a lot of fun.
I was going to ask if you keep them for the clock museum and say this is what our children did.
We keep a couple of them, but you end up making, it's really a clock in a box. So each timepiece is about so big.
Wow.
So we can't keep that many of them because we need room for our other clocks as well and our timepieces.
I know everywhere you look, you see a watch, a clock.
Yeah. We have almost 10,000 pieces in our collection.
Wow.
Not all of them on display because we wouldn't have room for that. But we do rotate pieces around for programs or for exhibitions or things like that. So.
Do you go to schools with libraries?
Yeah, we do lots of different things. So we go to schools doing things like the assembly line or any kinds of programs actually we can bring into the schools. We do time capsule programs in schools as well as a time capsule program that we've done at the museum. Well, let me show you actually what that's like. So what I brought, a couple of show and tell projects here.
Oh, nice.
This is our time capsule. The reason we do time capsule programs is because Edward Ingram, who was the president of the E. Ingram Company, clock manufacturing in Bristol, and one of the founders of the museum, he donated to the museum a series of time capsules that he had packed from the E. Ingram Company starting in the 1930s. Wow. So they're these great crates. They say, do not open until at least, whatever year. We have 3 of them left that haven't been opened yet.
Oh, wow, they went that far.
Yeah, well, we haven't opened one every year. We kind of open them on special occasions.
Okay.
And what he did was he would pack them with different timepieces as they came off the assembly line. He would put in there different advertisements for the company. And in some cases, he would write a letter and talk about the state of the industry and pack that as well. So we took that and adapted that for kids. And so we have time capsules like this. We've done it in schools. We've done it as museum programs. We've done it with Girl Scout troops or after-school programs or PTA programs or all sorts of different things. And every child gets a box.
Open up these boxes that you... Yeah,
right? It is. It's really interesting.
What's in there?
And there's still people who worked at Ingram's. And so when we've opened time capsules, we've invited them to come back and see what some of the pieces are. So it's a lot of fun. So in the time capsule program that we do, I was going to say, we'll see what we have here. There's a couple of different things that go in there. We have a little welcome. You can also buy these in our museum shop. So we've packed them in a way that if you're taking it home or doing it with your family at home, that you have all the information about it as well. A little sheet that talks about when the time capsule was packed and the kinds of things that you'll find. When we do the programs in schools and things like that, we talk about what are good things to put in your time capsule. Maybe your favorite magazine, maybe a picture of your family, something like that. Picture of your favorite pet. What are things that are bad to put in a time capsule?
Yeah, I'm glad you do that.
Your favorite sandwich is probably not so good.
That's right.
Your gerbil or a hamster, candy, things like that, not so good. Yeah. But the kinds of things that you talk about that are good and not good to put in time capsules.
That's good.
There's a little bit of history about time capsules and, what you would put in them. Talks about your family tree, people that you put in there. So you fill out these kinds of things and you put it in the time capsule. We give you some little crayons that you can decorate your box with. So we have gear crayons, gear-shaped crayons.
Wow.
We give people, markers that you can decorate your box, the outside of your box with as well.
Very good. You got everything in
Lots of good stuff in here. And then there's some seals so that you can seal your time capsule. We have a little label on the top that says "Do not open until," and so you can decide when you want to open your time capsule. And it's a lot of fun because then people come back and they say that they've opened their time capsule 10 years later.
Wow.
We've done this for a while, although these are new. The boxes themselves are new.
I don't know if I could wait that long.
I know, right? So it's been a lot of fun because you get a chance to look back at, the kinds of things that you might have liked 5 years ago even, or what you looked like 5 years ago, or, different things like that, different memories that you would
They don't use them anymore.
Yeah, so and it's a fun family activity to do. It's fun to do with schools because some schools might do it when you're in kindergarten, and then you get to open your time capsule when you're in 6th grade or senior year or something like that. And it's so many changes that happen in those ages that, you know, it's a really kind of a fun thing to see what they put into it. So this is one of our fun activities that we do at the museum, or we can do in classrooms, or we can do it wherever. It's very portable and fun and a lot of fun. That there.
What else do you have for us?
What else do I have?
I see a bag of goodies in there.
I do.
Not candy, but...
No, sorry. Next time.
Next time.
We have alarm clock chocolates. I'll bring those for us next time. So this is a sample of a teaching program that we actually, Colleen, who is our Director of Interpretation, did this year. And we had a school group that was studying light and shadows. And so they came to the museum and we did a program on sundials.
Oh.
And what they had a chance to do was come into the museum, and we learned a little bit about the history of sundials and how people use them and when people use them. And then they got a chance to make their own sundial. So you had a paper plate, which kids were able to decorate if they wanted to. And then we have our little gnomon, what would be like a gnomon. And thankfully, when we did it, it was a very nice day. So they were able to go out into our garden, and they were able to actually take it outside and see. I don't know if you can see how the shadow casts the shadow there. So they were able to see what time it was by actually using a sundial.
It's like a sundial.
Yep. We had it all prepped, so in case the weather wasn't nice, we had a ring light set up so that they were able to do it inside and get the same idea. Because, you know, that's the whole concept with the sundial, is you need to see that shadow. So this was a really fun program for us to do, where we were taking something that these first grade students, in this case, were already studying, and adapt it to something that fit in with how the Clock and Watch Museum and our collections. We have sundials in our collections and things like that. They were able to talk about light and shadows and a practical use for them. So that was a lot of fun this year for us to be able to do projects like this with them.
Yeah, you have more ideas than you did last time you come.
Well, I thought I'd bring a selection of things. Not sure what we were going to talk about today, so I thought I'd bring some fun stuff.
No, it's good. It's always fun. I have a little Mickey Mouse watch that I had when I was little. I won't say how long ago that was, but
they still produce them, so we're good.
So does anybody or anyone come in and say, can you appraise my watch or clock?
People do, and we are not able to do that because we can't give a value, because it's kind of against, it's kind of a conflict of interest for us.
Well, it's more like I'm thinking, can you tell how far back this went?
Absolutely.
Or when this was made?
We answer a lot of those kinds of questions, and actually we have programs at the museum. Throughout the year, we have clock identification days and watch identification days, where we have an expert come in, and you can bring your timepiece or a photograph of it. If it's a grandfather clock, we don't want you carrying it in. But if it's a Mickey Mouse watch, you're absolutely welcome to bring that. And they can tell you some of the history of it, who made it, when it was made, you know, in some cases condition, if maybe the hands on a watch or the band were replaced or things like that. And they give you some of the history of your special timepiece.
Do they fix it if it's broken?
No, we have a list of repairers, though, in the area. We don't have anyone on staff who does repair work, but we do have a list of people who are local throughout the state of Connecticut and in other states as well, as we've heard of them.
That's good to know they're still around, because, mine's, you know,
it's a very rare job field right now. They're pretty busy because not a lot of people do it anymore, but
it's like glass blowing. You don't see that either.
That's true.
Not that anything to do with clocks, but
glass dials.
A lot of people. Oh, that's right, glass dials. Do people donate their clocks or watches to you?
They do sometimes. We ask that people send us photographs of them because we have an artifacts committee who takes a look at things. As you can imagine, after collecting for 70 years, we have quite a collection. And sometimes it's just a question of the fact that we may already have a copy of that particular timepiece. And so we wouldn't be able to show it. we have space constraints like everyone does in their own homes.
It's
So
pretty
sometimes,
small.
yeah, so sometimes we have to say thank you, but no, because we have no place to put it, or we may already have a version of that
Right.
timepiece.
Describe the museum. I know it looks, the outside of the building looks really, really old. I know you told me once, but I don't remember. And it has an upstairs and then downstairs, and you have stuff on both and the main floor.
So we are housed in an 1801 building. And it has had 2 different additions put on since the museum moved in the 1950s. It has an addition that was put on in 1956 and then one that was put on in 1987. And so we have 10,000 square feet of exhibit space. It's the building doesn't look anywhere close to that big from the outside.
When you go in,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, where did this come from? Yeah.
And we have 8 different galleries that show
8?
different kinds of pieces. One that has a lot of our tall case clocks, our grandfather clocks. It's fantastic to be there around noon. We have the clock set just slightly off from each other so you can hear the different sounds of the ticking and chiming. And on Fridays, we have a group of gentlemen who call themselves the Old Cranks. And they come in and they wind about 60 or 70 clocks throughout the galleries.
That's right, because you had to wind. Even your watch,
Absolutely.
you had to
Even
wind.
watch.
I remember doing that.
Yeah, we have some battery-operated ones in our collections too, though. And the guys are great to listen to and talk to, and you can talk to them about the timepieces that they're winding and watch what they're doing. So we have rooms like that. We have a novelty room, which has novelty timepieces. So things like your Mickey Mouse watch would be there, and things like my Snow White watch that I had when I was a kid, pieces like that. And so, that's a great room for nostalgia for a lot of people because they look especially at those character watches. Lone Ranger, Little Orphan Annie, Dick Tracy, all the Disney characters, all of the things like that. And it's a great sense of nostalgia for people because so many people had some type of character watch growing up.
Yeah. And the clocks are just amazing. The different size, the shapes, and even the face, the hands.
There's really something for everyone because it's not, you have the technology. So for people who are very science oriented, you have those technology. There's great history in Bristol and Connecticut in the United States about the clock industry. You can talk about things like immigration and the jobs that people did. There's artistry, the beautiful dial painting, the engravings that are done on some of the silver dials, the wood carving that's done on the cases.
Yeah.
So there's really a little bit of everything.
Because a lot of that's not being done anymore. Though I know they had a problem with one of the paints because they were inhaling.
It was radium paint. Yes. And the women who worked in the clock industry would lick the point of their paintbrush because it got a nice fine point so that they could paint the dials. They would dip it in the radium paint and put that point on. And of course, radium is
it's like radiation.
Not very good for you.
Yeah.
And it killed a lot of the women who worked in that industry for a period of time.
That's sad. It's too bad they're doing that for us. And
they made a lot of changes. So out of the bad comes the good. And there was a lot of changes that were made to labor and the way that business was operated and safety concerns and things like that because of that situation.
Oh, good,
so
good.
out of a very terrible and tragic situation, there was many positive changes made to the labor force.
Oh, good. Very good. We have 2 minutes left. I see you have books. Does that mean you read stories?
We do. We do story times at the museum, story and craft times. We also go to libraries. We've done, small children's groups and things like that. All of these kinds of activities are found on our website, which is clockandwatchmuseum.org. And we encourage people to check that out because we have an always changing selection of programs for kids and youth and adults and something for everyone.
Oh, wow, even adults.
Of course.
In there.
We love the adults. We have all sorts of great activities.
So we can find this in Bristol on Maple.
On Maple Street in Bristol. We're right in the center of town on Federal Hill.
And for more information,
call the museum at 860-583-6070 or clockandwatchmuseum.org. We are the American Clock and Watch Museum. We're open Wednesdays through Sundays from 10 to 5, and
That was
we
fine.
love to have people come and visit us.
That was my next question.
Good, I'm glad I got that too.
You don't close, well, you just said you do, but I mean, you don't like close for the winter or anything.
No, we don't. We're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays primarily because we do work around the museum, and sometimes we do some of our larger group tours and things like that on Mondays and Tuesdays. So if we're having 75 first graders, we try and schedule it at a time when it's just them in the museum. It's a better environment for everyone.
Definitely. Well, thank you again for bringing all this that you brought. Maybe next time you can bring us some clocks and watches.
Absolutely.
I'd love to see those.
Absolutely.
It's always a blessing when you come. I love all your information, and thank you. Love you for tuning in to Christine's Corner.